So welcome to Open Mic Night number 69. Oh, someone's coming in. Now, tonight is a regular open mic night, but we are also announcing the winners of the excellent, Blaise's fault this name, excellent manuscript assessment competition. When should we do that? Les and Kev?
In the middle.
In the middle somewhere? Okay, we'll keep people waiting. Okay, so for those of you who haven't been here before and have put their names on the list, I don't necessarily go in the order that the names are. So we do mix it up. So, are you going to read tonight, Val? So I will be mixing it up. I like to mix it up depending on what the material is so that we have a variety. And so somewhere in the middle I will be announcing the competition winners. Come in.
Sorry.
It's okay. Either of you ladies going to read?
Yeah, that's all right.
Yeah, come and put your name on the list. I'll start with Marion.
Oh, you will start. Right.
Yeah.
Give me 1 second to...
Do you want me to put you a bit further down?
Sorry, no, I've just got to pull this out of this case.
All right.
Play my guitar, and I went out to tea last night, and so my friend offered me his ukulele. So this is my debut of the ukulele. I have not played the ukulele before, so that'll be an interesting episode. But what I want to, I didn't want to sing unaccompanied, so that was hence the ukulele. But I'm going to sing one song, and I want to read you a couple of poems. But they fundamentally are on the same, I think, broad theme. I was thinking about wives and mothers, and particularly those of the generation probably before me, people like my mother and my grandmother. So that's the theme between the things. Oh, this is not an original song, this is Dolly Parton's song. Mama never seemed to miss the finer things of life. If she did, she never did say so to Daddy. She never wanted to be more than mother and a wife. If she did, she never did say so to Daddy. The only thing that seemed to be important in her life was to make our house a home and make us happy. Mama never needed any more than what she had. If she did, she never did say so to Daddy. He often left her all alone. She didn't mind her staying home. If she did, she never did say so to Daddy. She never missed the flowers, cards he never sent her. If she did, she never did say so to Daddy. Being took for granted was a thing that she expected, and she didn't need those things to make her happy. She didn't seem to notice that he didn't kiss or hold her. If she did, she never did say so to Daddy. One morning we awoke just to find a note Mama carefully wrote and left for Daddy. As we began to read it, our ears could not believe it. Words she had written there for Daddy. She said, the kids are old enough, they don't need me very much. Gone in search of love I need so badly. I needed you so long, I just can't keep holding on. She never meant to come back home. If she did, she never did say so to Daddy. Goodbye to Daddy. She didn't want to burn her bra. She cooked and cleaned and kept house, while our sisterhood of the 60s urged, get up, get going, get out, as if everyday investments in our lives didn't matter, weren't good enough, didn't count. Our proclamations of liberation oppressed her. The children have moved upwards and out. Sacrificial years for children's higher education brought alienation by degrees. All that glitters. She was willing to forgo the rock on her hand while they saved for a roof overhead, only to find his promise was not set in stone. And finally, the good provider. He works a steady job and the bills are always paid. He's a good provider. The grass is cut, the kindling split. He is a good provider. Home from work, he's in the shed to fix the cupboard door. He is a good provider. He tunes the carburettor so the car is on the road. He is a good provider. He oils squeaky hinges and planes sticking doors. He is a good provider. She reads the children's stories and tucks them into bed. The evenings, hers alone, as he's soaring in the shed. What more could she want?
Telling me how long you have. So we have no idea how long Marion went for, but it seemed about right, actually. So we have four, actually, we might go 5 minutes each. And Kev is actually filming everyone, so if you don't want to be on YouTube, please let him know, because it will go up on YouTube early next week. So, at the 4.5 minute mark, Les will go a single ding. Is he going to do a single ding? And at 5 minutes, double ding, which means time's up. So you don't obviously have to just stop mid-sentence, you can finish your sentence. Okay. Kim Smith. Yes, Kim is going to read a short story called 5 Jacks. Good to see some new readers tonight. Okay.
Well, my story's been shortlisted in the Wyndham Writing Awards as a flash fiction. So winners are announced on the 7th of November, so fingers crossed. Thank you. The sun shone like a giant torch as we strolled along the sandy beach. I hated hanging out at home with Mum on school holidays. She told me that I should be grateful to live in such a beautiful place. I wanted to have fun, like at Luna Park. Mum's mobile rang. "Hi, Sally." I dropped the pace and was a good 10 steps behind Mum. Then another 10. Mum kept walking ahead, still absorbed in her phone conversation. "Hoi!" I looked around and spotted a boy playing with some hermit crab shells near the water's edge. The hem of his shorts was soaked. He didn't seem to notice that he was getting wet. Sleeves were rolled up on his stiff, buttoned-up shirt. It was strange that I hadn't noticed him when we walked past. I backtracked and eyed him with caution. "What you doing?" "Oh, just a game of jacks. I use shells instead of knuckle bones," he said. "My father is coming, so I'm filling in time." I didn't know what jacks or knuckle bones were, but didn't want to admit that to this boy. "Care for a game?" "Maybe," I replied. He snatched the 5 small shells and shoved them into a little calico bag. He shuffled them around, then emptied the contents back onto the sand. "All right, me first." He threw one shell into the air and gathered up 2, then another before the airborne shell descended. He threw me a triumphant look. With shells placed back in bag, he nodded to signal that it was my shot. From the spilled pile, I tossed the largest shell up, but couldn't pick up a single shell from beneath. "Harder than it looks," he smiled. "Hey, where you from? I haven't seen you at school." "Over there," he pointed out to sea. "Crab Island?" He nodded. "Cool. I've never met anyone from overseas before." Mum bellowed from down the beach. "Jacob, what are you doing down there?" "Nothing," I hollered. "Don't wander off." "I'm not a baby," I mumbled. Mum stood with hands on hips. "I better go," I said to the boy. "What's your name?" "Bert." "See you, Bert. Goodbye." He resumed his solitary game. We walked one street back from the beach to home. I scoffed down 3 sandwiches. Mum made a cake. The mixmaster whirled around with a low hum, gobbling up flour and eggs in its smooth concoction. Once the cake was cooking, I licked my finger, coated with leftover batter. "Can we go back to the beach, Mum?" "Yes, just wait until the cake's cooked." I sat on the couch and waited. And waited. Mum fell asleep while watching a soapie. Her mouth opened like a cave. She didn't see me sneak out the front door. Several families were headed towards the beach. I tore ahead. Many people were gathered on the sand dunes. Water police zoomed in deep water. A helicopter hovered above. "Divers found remnants of a small fishing boat," a tall man in the crowd said. "The vessel disappeared 80-odd years ago, according to the news report," a lady in purple bathers said. "The bodies of a father and son never recovered." Wow, what a cool story to tell everyone at school next week. I ran down to the shore. Some exciting news to share with Bert. I caught sight of something floating in the shallows. I waded in to retrieve what looked like a plastic bag. The little calico bag rocked back and forth in gentle waves. I spun around and spied a neat pile of 5 shells on the sand. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Stefano D'Agata is going to read a song called
First
Milestone.
musical piece I've written that's not a parody, and it's a bit of a tearjerker. Situation is this Wednesday last week was my 25th wedding anniversary. But those of you who know me, I lost my wife to breast cancer about 7 years ago, and I was going through my head as to what that meant to me, given that she's not here. So I came up with this verse, and I'll put it to music. So, because I don't perform, actually, I can't read, write, or play music, I'll just sing it a cappella. 25 years since we made our vows. Should I celebrate? I don't know now. Did our union end when you were taken away? Should this milestone pass without any say? Milestones come, but what do they mean when what they signify has ceased to be? This milestone reminds me of the time we shared, but you're not here, so is it just another day? Death did us part, my heart was broke. Though years have passed, tears I choke. Depression and sorrow left in your wake. I remain a victim of your fate. Milestones come, but what do they mean when what they signify has ceased to be? This milestone reminds me of the pain we shared, but you're not here, so is it just another day? Would our love have stayed strong if you'd remained? Or would life's challenges have pushed us away? Life would be different, that's for sure. For better or worse, who could know? But the fruits of our union continue to thrive. Though bruised and scarred, they push on with their lives. The family we established continues to be, so perhaps there's still meaning to this anniversary. This milestone remains as a measure of our promise, as what we established continues to flourish. What we had can't be taken away. It's worth to celebrate the love that remains. Milestones come, but what do they mean when what they signify has ceased to be. This milestone reminds me of the love we shared. Though you're not here, it's still a special day. 25 years since we made our vows. I'll celebrate the love. Thank you.
Michelle Burke. Where's
I knew you would.
Oh, there you
be
are.
up after me.
Yeah. I thought it was appropriate.
On you.
Us widows stick together. I brought a special guest with me tonight. He's well travelled. We've just come back from 7 weeks overseas. So Paul's back. We're back. And now this is the newer version, because you would have seen, if anybody's seen him in the past, he's been taped up. But I just want to just talk about the 7 weeks I've been away. Sorry. It was an amazing experience. We did some tours, so it was, went from Hong Kong and we didn't see any trouble. Well, they were in the thick of it, but we didn't see
You
anything.
might just want to give a little bit of a backstory.
A backstory?
People who don't know your story.
Oh, you don't know my story, okay. This is my gorgeous, spunky, late husband, Paul. He died of a rare melanoma 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago, probably 3.5 years ago. So when we were talking on his deathbed, he said to me, "What are you going to do when I'm gone?" And I said to him, "I'm going to travel." And I said, "I'm going to go to all the places that we promised, we planned to go to." And let me just stood him up, sorry, or sit him down. It's just annoying me. Sorry, darling. I got the smaller version. I'll put him in. So he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to go travel. And I said, what I'm going to do is get a cardboard cutout of you. Not a cardboard cutout. I said, I'm going to get a picture of you and pack you in my suitcase and take you out and get photos of us all around the world. He said, "You're not, are you?" I said, "I'm going to do that." He said, "You're not?" I said, "I'm going to." So this is the line that media absolutely love, is I prepared Paul for death and he prepared me for life. So in that moment, when I said I was going to go travelling with him, I think he dared me and egged me on to do it. And he knew that I was stubborn anyway and always wanted the last say. So I am definitely getting the last say. So that's sort of the background to Paul. So in 2017, I went travelling with him for 9 weeks in America, and we did America, and then we did Paris, and then, which is a place, our number one place we wanted to go to, and the Eiffel Tower. And when I saw the Eiffel Tower, I burst into tears, because here I am in the place of the city of love, and here I am with the cardboard cutout of Paul. So it was a bit surreal, but anyway. So he's 5'9". I travel around. He packs into my suitcase very nicely. He's got his own calico bag. So he's the funny thing about it now is, I just want to tell you a couple of stories. So anyway, that's sort of the background. But what happened was we went to Scotland and Edinburgh. We went to the military tattoo, and then we just made our way up to Aberdeen, across to Fort William, and then just made our way down to through Scotland and Wales, and then Britain, and down to Brighton, then up to Oxford, and then London, and then over to Paris, and then I did Ireland for a week doing some media commitments. So what happened was, when I wrote the book #Travelling with Cardboard Paul, which there are some copies around here, I had a fabulous publicist who it went a bit viral all around the world. So we've got something like 60 media outlets, I think it's more now, and 7 countries where our story has gone viral. So what happened was, I was getting phone calls, because my publicist was working with me through the UK and Ireland tour, and my publicist
was contacting me through, contacted me saying, look, I've got media, I had a media schedule going. So I had a phone interview with PJ Coogan from Cork Radio. I was in Fort William at the time, and he invited me personally to meet him in Cork when I was in Ireland. So I said, yeah, great, I'll bring Cowboy Paul with me. So then when I was, just after I launched the book, BBC Wilshire contacted me and I had an interview with them. That was back in May and June. And I said, look, I'm coming back to Stonehenge, and Stonehenge is an amazing place, and if you've ever been there, I just love Stonehenge. And I said, look, I'll be back there in September. So they said, okay. So when I was in, we're in Betsy Coed in wherever we were, and I got a phone call from BBC Wilshire. I said, look, where will you be? And I said, look, I'll be in Bath, and they said, we'll send a journalist out and we'll meet you there. So I met the journalist, and she was an absolutely gorgeous lady. And so they followed me around Bath, and then they said, we'll meet you in Stonehenge the next day. So I had a BBC film crew follow me around Stonehenge for about 2 or 3 hours. It was insane, absolutely insane. I had people coming up who were laughing, crying, people wanting to know what BBC were following me around for. And it was so surreal, and there is footage floating around. So BBC Wilshire on Facebook have put some footage through, and we've got, I shared it again today because we've got 100,000 views on Facebook, or the footage, and 91 shares, and there's heaps of comments and heaps of whatever. So it's just amazing, and I feel so humble that people are just actually, listening to the story, and I'm touching people's, so I'm not touching physically, but their hearts, and sharing the story, and then people, complete strangers, come up to me and tell me their stories. And look, I've got so many stories to tell, which I was going to write a book about this tour, but I'm not going to now because I just don't feel like it. But I had one little incident which I just want to share with you. I was in the Tower of London, and I was in St James's Chapel, and I was sitting there talking to Henry VIII, as I do, and because Henry VIII and I just get on so well. He haunts me occasionally. And so I was having an argument with, or not necessarily an argument, I was berating Henry about how many executions he did in this particular year. It was over 72,000. And he said, well, that's what we used to do in the past. I said, okay, fair enough, in the 1300 or 1500, whatever years he was in. It was to do with the past. I said, oh, fair enough. So I was just sitting there for a little bit longer, and this thought came into my head, and I thought it was really apt at the time. And it says, we cannot change the past, but we can change the future by our actions in the now. So I just wanted to leave you with that, because I just thought, what's going on in the world now, and you see it when you are travelling, the amount of homelessness, or the protesters with the environment, and I was invited to appear on the Ray Darcy show in Dublin, and I was there for about 10 or 15 minutes. There is footage, I'm just trying to get copies of it, and you can see it online, but I'm just trying to get a link so I can share it. But there was a young couple and their families there, and they had gone to New York, and they're like 17, 18-year-olds going for the environment and through that protesting, and they were just amazing to see these young kids doing what they're doing. And I'm just a widow roaming around the world with a cardboard cutout, who's very famous. He's the most famous cardboard cutout in the world, and just doing this work. So I'm just blessed that I actually get to experience this. So thank you for me, waffling on.
Okay, I might announce the winners of the excellent manuscript assessment competition. So we actually had, I don't have all the categories with me, I thought I did. There were actually 6 categories, but we didn't get people putting stuff in for self-help or business category, which surprised me, but that's okay. So, I have 4 categories here. In the poetry section, we actually combined poetry and short stories because we didn't get many short stories, but this is a collection. There's some collections there. So, for the children's picture book section, I guess you could call it, the winner is Karen Hendrick. Karen, I don't think Karen would be here. A lot of these are from all over Australia. And her book, so this is children's picture book, so for young, sort of around 5 years old. Now remember that this competition, for anyone who isn't aware, it was based on the actual pitch, not what your book is about, but how you described it. And some people managed that well, some not so well, and some in between. There's always going to be, I'm going to actually read out the pictures because it's something for each of you to learn when it comes to your storytelling and how you pitch it to competitions or publishers and things like that. So her kids' book is called Cauliflower and Cheese, and this is the pitch. Cauliflower is a sheep that thinks and she loves to tinker. Cheese is a curious sheep who seeks adventure. When Cheese disappears while Cauliflower is building her fort, she must decide if it is a sheep game or if Cheese is in trouble. Cauliflower finds Cheese has fallen down a hole and must find a way to rescue her. Luckily, she engineers a grand plan by throwing dirt down the hole. Cheese shakes and steps the dirt off and steps on top of it. Eventually, she is free. They are 2 friends that always look out for each other. In terms of a pitch, it's not perfect, it's a little bit long, but I kind of like the idea of 2 sheep called Cauliflower and Cheese. So that's the winner of that one. For memoir, the winner was Michelle Tom for her book called 10,000 Aftershocks. And again, it comes down to the way it's pitched, not necessarily what the content is. So if any of you here have who did enter for memoir, it's about how you sell yourself, how you sell your story. Michelle survives the Christchurch earthquakes of 2010-11 and relocates to Australia to find stable ground. But soon after, her estranged sister, Marianne, is diagnosed with terminal cancer and she returns to New Zealand to reconnect. Memories of her chaotic childhood and difficult mother-daughter bond flood back, and as Michelle helps her lay her sister in her casket, she realises she must cut ties with her mother. For the novel section, Christine Johnson for The Chinaman's Horse. The Chinaman's Horse traces the stories of 2 characters from vastly different cultures. 25-year-old English widow Isabel Gilbert and Chinese farmer and herbalist Li Chung-ming, who are forced in the 1850s to leave their homelands, seeking better fortune in a foreign land. While struggling to make marks on a new and challenging landscape, putting down roots both literally and metaphorically, both characters see a creature refuse to submit to the will of another and find themselves permanently and magically transformed by the new landscape, even as they seek to transform it. And finally, in the poetry, this is sort of the poetry section because we didn't have a short story section as such, but this is actually an anthology of poetry and short story by Richard Trembath, who I know is here. If you can clap. If we should ever meet again. If we should ever meet again reflects upon the many facets of life, love and loss from the variety of viewpoints of an award-winning journalist, champion hurdler, successful trotting driver, acclaimed poet and songwriter. This collection of poetry and short stories tells it like it is in the language of the common man. And actually that last sentence, Richard, is actually what kind of sealed it for me. Okay, so this collection of poetry and short stories tells it like it is in the language of the common man. So thank you. Thanks, Richard. So means is each of those people are actually going to have someone at Busybird read their work and give them a comprehensive report on what is good and bad about their work and what it needs for improvement to make it a publishable manuscript. So it might be, work about the structure, or it might be looking at characters and working on the pitch as well. Because, some people are looking to go traditionally to, looking for a traditional publisher, which is really hard to do these days because it's very competitive and it's getting harder and harder all the time. So you really need to work on your pitch so that they can't ignore you, basically. So I'll talk to you later, Richard, about that. So well done. I'll also say that everyone who entered, which was about 35 people, are all going to get a chat with me about their pitch and some pointers as to how to improve their pitch, but also some things about their work, because I haven't read the whole manuscript that has been put in, but I have read a bit of it so that I can give them feedback. So it's going to take me a little while, so be patient. If you're in the room and you did enter, it'll take me a little while to put everyone in the calendar to do that. Okay. Oh, well, we may as well have Richard come up now and read a short story called The Rubbish Bin.
No pressure, Blaise. There's probably been more romantic titles for short stories, but this is called The Rubbish Bin. He'd promised himself he wasn't going to be like them. He'd been quite outspoken in his opinion that, despite their success, it was obvious they didn't own rubbish bins. Most people, he'd said, know when they've written a piece of crap, and they chuck it. But some of them don't waste anything. They just put it in a book. Their best stuff was great, he'd said, but their books were full of padding. It didn't matter whether they were collections of short stories or poetry. There was a lot of it which should never have seen the light of day. He'd likened it to some of the albums he'd bought by popular recording artists. If you wanted the one good song, you had to put up with 20 others no one had ever heard of. He was determined not to do that, but by his own admission, he lacked imagination, which narrowed his available range of topics. It was common knowledge that most of his stories were based largely on personal experience, so there were times he had to be prudent in the way he wrote them. For instance, he could hardly write about the murder. Revealing the intricate details would provide a great story, but he'd been very careful, and the whole investigation had quickly faded from prominence. The cops hadn't even found the knife, and they wouldn't. He knew that. Nevertheless, his writing career had flourished. His books were popular, and he couldn't take the chance that one of the investigators was a fan who liked to read his short stories. It was probably unlikely, but it was well known that many of his stories were non-fiction, so it wouldn't be smart to give them any sort of a lead by writing about it. He knew that of all the people in the office, he'd be considered to be the least likely to be what they call a person of interest. He lived alone, kept to himself, didn't socialise, and was on holiday the day it happened. The cops had interviewed everyone, himself included, but all they'd really established was that the victim had the reputation of always being first to arrive at work, and that he wasn't well liked. His routine was well known. He was always on the first train, and walked from the station to the office, even during the winter when it was dark. Everyone knew that, so it didn't provide a clue, and his lack of popularity and the number of people he'd offended hadn't done much to narrow down the list of possible suspects. But the whole thing had pretty much gone away. The funeral hadn't been well attended, and the media had quickly moved on to their next expose. So the bottom line was that none of it really helped. As much as he needed another good story to bolster his upcoming collection, and as much as the murder would have provided great material, he was going to have to consign the idea, unwritten, to the rubbish bin. He'd have to find something else. There are some things better left unwritten, for all sorts of reasons. That's that. And seeing that the bell ringer hasn't got me yet, and seeing as how Blaise said that my poetry is all right, I'll just read you one short one, Les, called The Final Page. Write to me one day and tell me of the second half. Though we have gone our separate ways to live our separate lives, I know enough of yours to feel that I've read half the book. And though it is no longer mine to read, I think of you occasionally and wonder what the unread chapters hold. But even if I were to find the book and learn somehow where life has taken you, I know I'd never really know the whole of it, your hidden mystery. And I am well aware that there would be no point in skipping through the unseen chapters to find just how the story ends. For it will end as we both knew it would, still unresolved. The final page is missing. Thank you.
Betty Martin is going to read a poem about hats, to be precise.
Thank you. I'm feeling a little bit... It's been a very serious night so far. It's been beautiful but serious. And here's me. I don't have a serious bone in my body, sorry. So this is a poem I wrote a couple of years ago. It's called My Hat. I yearned to write poetry, thought I'd have lessons. So I booked a course which offered 10 lessons. I found there's a confusing variety of verse, sestina, haiku, pantoum, and even worse, prose poetry and other types that don't even rhyme. To me, it's a crime if a poem doesn't rhyme. Went off to buy stationery, a selection of folders, writing pads, pens, a printer, and feeling bolder, I bought a thesaurus, a dictionary, just what's required to assist me to write poetry that's truly inspired. Arranged a cosy spot with my new possessions, allotted time each day for writing sessions. Sat for weeks, pen in hand, awaiting inspiration. Not one word was written to my consternation. No gems of wisdom. I had writer's block. Pens, papers, folders. I had the right stock. Then I realised the problem. One thing I did lack. If one intends to write poetry, one must have a hat. 4 hours roaming shops brought disillusion. I dragged myself home in a state of confusion. Too many choices. What would most suit me? Should I buy just 1, 2, or even 3? Perhaps for a poet to achieve the correct voice, her headwear should reflect the verse of her choice. For a long-haired poet to get in the mood, she could bundle her lanky locks in a snood. A romantic thinking of writing a sonnet perhaps should do so under a bonnet. Middle Eastern sagas, which may be disturbing, may require the writer to don a turban. If writing of spies, like Burgess and Philby, the author might need to wear a tilby. To compose an ode, a tanka or a haiku, a beret worn on a slant might do. To write comedy, to give people a laugh, it might be enough to just wear a scarf. Perhaps C.J. Dennis wore a toque when he wrote The Sentimental Bloke. Do you imagine that the composer Puccini wrote Madame Butterfly while sporting a beanie? So at the shops, 24 hats I chose. to assist in the writing of poetry and prose. Words now flow from the end of my pen, so I've made the correct decision then. Each morning I select from this array headwear to suit the mood of the day. I peruse, then I choose. It's as easy as that. To be a successful writer, you just need a hat. Thank you.
Thanks, Betty. Jimmy, are you going to have to do a song tonight, Jimmy? Are you going to play tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it.
Yeah, cool. Pamela. Pamela Coots is going to read her last instalment of her memoir. It's going to be a bit sad.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Yes.
Don't do that.
So, goodbye to dance.
No. No.
It's very sad coming to the end of it after all this long time, but I hope you enjoy it. I was in Australia, if you recall, from the last time I was here. So here we go. I had to go to Hong Kong to get my work permit again, because after a year you can't stay. So I went to Hong Kong for 2 months and came back. On our return to Melbourne, because I was met at the airport by my friend Becky and her husband, and they took me to Adelaide for 3 days. You know, they said, you're going to work hard. On our return to Melbourne, I found another 2-bedroom apartment in the same block as before and commenced work. Except for a few new artists, I felt as though I'd never left. Becky, true to her word, kept me busy, helping with the costumes and rehearsals, and I loved it. Peace of mind for 12 months, with no more country swapping or fears of being without work. The South American number was well received, but couldn't surpass the triumph of the Spanish number. Life was idyllic. One evening, Gina asked, can I visit you on Sunday afternoon with a friend? This was unusual, and I knew there had to be an underlying reason. Perplexed and delighted, I replied, please do. I'll have tea and cake ready. I couldn't believe my eyes when they arrived with a snow-white Maltese cross pup called Buttons. Would you like to look after him for a couple of days? Gina inquired, already knowing the answer. For 3 days the pup hardly ate, but soon succumbed to my charms. As the days passed, I confronted Gina. If you don't come and take the dog back, he'll be mine. She said nothing and smiled. Potty trained and performing tricks, he became my constant companion, and we frolicked together or played ball, taking long leisurely walks in the park. Could life get any better? Listening to the news while playing with Buttons, I was stunned to hear the government is offering an amnesty to anyone who arrived in Australia before 1980 to apply for permanent residency. It involved visits to the doctor for health tests, police checks, and answering many personal questions. When my residency certificate arrived, the entrepreneur told me, you can stay as long as you want. I'd been working constantly for 18 months, when without warning my life was thrown upside down. The impresario became seriously ill, and Becky was at his side to look after him. A young manager was appointed to run the show who lacked managerial experience and tended to flirt with the young girls. He came to me stating, you are finished at the end of the week, without any explanation. Astounded, I was in a quandary. I should have known this could happen. Show business can be so fickle at times. Hearing of my dilemma, other artists I knew told me I could join a show going to Japan. No, I didn't want to go back there or leave Australia, and Buttons was anxious, sensing my despair. Recalling the endless years of travel and cheap hotel rooms, I realised it wasn't so bad after all. I was no spring chicken, and having residency, I could apply to social services while searching for normal work. Decision made, I swept the bundle of joy into my arms and looking into his big brown eyes, held him close and whispered, "Don't worry, my darling. I'm going to look after you for the rest of your life." Yes, it was time to hang up my shoes.
Pamela, how many years had you been dancing?
I've been dancing 21 years professionally.
Yeah. That must have been a big change to stop.
Oh. Well, I didn't care. I loved Australia and I loved my dog. It didn't matter. I was going to fight through again. And I did.
Thank you.
And I won through.
Marcello is going to sing a song. Belajar.
Sorry, I've got to hobble along.
That's okay. Do you want the stool?
No, I just use this.
Yep.
And I'll borrow someone's to give me like courage, mainly to the underprivileged. That's how we got to the French Revolution, we had the Marseillaise. In the American big internal war, we had John Brown's body. Then the Spanish, during the Revolution, that took up actually Ravel's Bolero, when they used to dance in the campsite during the night, which was all made famous in a film actually with Tarum Power and someone else. Anyway, and during the war, the English, because we all remember, they used to sing marching, "It's a long way to Tipperary" or "Pick Up Your Troubles," and then Vera Lynn made famous the White Cliffs of Dover. That's where the war basically was won. And in the other, the Russians had their songs too. But in Italy in 1943, when there was a big split between the fascists and the partisans, the song came out, which now has been taken as the official left movement sort of anthem, similar to the International. The International is more of a communist. Belajar was the Italian song which is known all over the world. Why I'm doing this? Because on Wednesday, because the actual song is short. Last Wednesday, my wife and I played a concert at the senior festival at the town hall. And some years ago, I was emceeing the big concert there, and I had my guitar as a prop. Unfortunately, something went wrong with the timing, and I had to fill in time. So, for some strange reason, I started playing Belajar. Don't ask me how, but it happened. And there were three good musicians, Irene Bella, and what's her name? Anthea Sideropoulos, that I've played with for quite a while, and someone else, and it really was successful. I mean, it says that I'm not a great singer, I can't sing, and the song is simple but very stirring. And just in the English version, I don't even know what it was, it's like this, it's only 6 verses, but it's one morning I woke up and I found them binder. Or partisan carry me away, for I feel I'm dying. And if I die as a partisan, you have to bury me. But bury me up in the mountain under the shadow of a beautiful flower. And the people who will pass by will say to me, what a beautiful flower. This is the flower of the partisan who died for freedom. And we've heard the word freedom here tonight quite a few times. And we're still fighting for freedom. And we see it all over the world, people fighting to save their planet, irrespective of whether you believe it or not, but we know that there are problems there. And so some years ago I was in Canada for Canada Day concert. We had about 60,000 people, and I performed this on radio live, and people said, look, why don't you play that? So I played that Belajar, and all of a sudden some other people came in, and I heard behind me this beautiful, really deep voice, almost speaking, and he knew the word in Italian beautifully. Of course, it happened to be Leonard Cohen. And then he let me sing a chorus with him, a Valladolid, in the same concert. So, Belajar, if you want to clap. Oh, it's not that wrong. Questa mattina mi sono svegliato. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Questa mattina mi sono svegliato e ho trovato l'invaso. Un partigiano, portami via. Bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Oh partigiano, portami via, che se no io morirò. Se io muoio, partigiano, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Se io muoio da partigiano, tu mi devi seppellire. E dirai su in montagna, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Seppellirai lassù in montagna, sotto l'ombra di un letto. Tutti quelli passeranno, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Tutti quelli che passeranno le diranno che è un bel fiore. Un bel fiore, partigiano, bella ciao, bella ciao, bella ciao, ciao, ciao. Quel bel fiore di partigiano che è morto per la libertà. E quel bel fiore di partigiano morto per la libertà.
Okay, Rosemary is going to read an essay called Bad Parents.
So I composed this in my lunch hour today, so forgive the quality, okay? Bad parents and those who fail quite spectacularly at it. So as they say on NCIS, these are their stories. Clunk, clunk. Bad mum story number 1. It was my daughter's 7th birthday. Oh, this was in Mexico. The usual rule in our household was the kids ate early to be in bed by 7 and the adults ate whenever my husband came home, which could be anywhere between 8 and midnight. But today was my daughter's birthday, so it was time to bend the rules. Her baby brother went off to bed as planned, but she excitedly sat down with her Barbies on the living room sofa to wait to join her parents for dinner. Eventually, her dad arrived home, as usual, late, rushing in to explain another drama in the office, as usual. I served dinner hurriedly, as usual, and we sat at the table discussing the latest office problem, as usual. After a while, a small voice called out from the living room, "What about my dinner, Mom?" And it was her birthday dinner. Bad mum story number 2. Location, Dubai. We had a new puppy. It ate everything. We also had a 6-year-old son. His room looked like everything the puppy ate. And there was Lego from one end of the room to the other. Tiny pieces which our 4-legged $6,000 investment could swallow and die from, or else cost us another $6,000 in vet fees. So I bought a Stairgate. I placed it across my son's doorway so that the puppy wouldn't go in and bankrupt us. I told my son to call out every time he needed to leave the room and I'd help him over it. But my son is, well, my son. He decided to climb over the high gate all by himself, and he slipped and he fell face down on the open chrome bin just near the bedroom door. The bin's edge missed his eyeball by this much, but the area around his eye took a whacking. Blood poured out of the wound, a small cut to be sure, but oh my, the blood. I picked him up and we raced out of the hotel apartment, me calling the International Medical Clinic as we ran. Yes, they can see him now. Phew. The lift doors opened and we entered the hotel lobby. Heart racing, my mind matched it in beats. What to do? My car was parked a zillion miles away. To get to it, you had to traverse, then exit the hotel lobby, then go through the shopping arcade, to the car park, exit way over on the other side, then walk across the steaming hot, this is Dubai, so we're talking 45 degrees, open air car park to where staff cars were right at the extreme end. I couldn't subject my blood-dripping eyed son to this long, hot walk. So I sat him in the lobby, facing the hotel entrance, and said, "Hey, I'm going to go to the car. I'll be back in 5 minutes, okay?" He nodded, holding his handkerchief to his eye. I ran out of the lobby, entered the shopping centre, and pushed shoppers rudely out of the way as I fought my way to the exit to the car park. Once outside, I ran as fast as I could across the blisteringly hot car park. Jumping in our car, I turned the key in the ignition, and off we went, out of the car park, into the hotel driveway, onto the corniche, across the roundabout, into the Dira tunnel, when I suddenly realised, cripes, I forgot my son. Did. Finally able to exit the tunnel, I U-turned illegally at the first place possible, then drove back through that tunnel, around the roundabout, turning at the corniche, up the hotel driveway, up to the entrance. There in the lobby sat my son, handkerchief now a bloody red. And waiting for me were 1,000 judging, angry eyes, glaring at me as I ran in, retrieved him, stuck him in his car seat, and headed back from whence I came. There are more episodes, but thankfully my time was up because I was expecting 3 minutes.
Thanks, Rosemary. Dom. Dominic Martin is going to do a song. It's cool, we've got a bit of music tonight. We could have a jam session, yeah. We could have a fire in the middle and we could all sit around and do campfire songs. That'd be fun. Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya. I don't know the words. Kumbaya. I don't know what song we're doing.
Sorry, I don't know that one.
You should.
Would you like the store?
Oh, you're a gentleman. Thanks very much.
I'm sure you sang that many times unless I'm wrong.
No, I never know the words. Keeping in the war theme of Marcello's is a bit different. This is a song written by Eric Bogle. I call it like a contemporary folk song. I love folk songs, but this is really nice. It talks about the horses that were taken over during World War I by the Australian boys. They took their horses over there, never thinking for a moment that when the war was over, they couldn't bring them back. And of course, there's a lot of stories told about a lot of horses being shot because they didn't want to leave them there. So anyway, Eric Bogle composed this song. It's as if they know. It's as if he knows. I might need a hat, mate. Be right with you. Anyone play a guitar with nylon strings in the? Yeah. They're very sensitive, aren't they?
You tune them at home, come here.
They've got no sense of humour. All right, so here we go. It's as if he knows. He's standing close to me. His breath warm on my sleeve. His head hung low. It's as if he knows what the dawn will bring. The end of everything for my old banjo. And all along the picket lines beneath the desert sky, the light horsemen move among their mates to say one by while the horses stand so quietly row on silent road. It's as if they know. Time after time, we rode through shot and shell, rode in and out of hell on their strong backs. Time after time, they brought us safely through with their swift sure hooves and their brave hearts. Tomorrow we will form up ranks and march down to the quay and sail back to our loved ones in that dear land across the sea, while our loyal and true companions who asked so little and gave so much lie dead in the dust. For the orders came, no horses to return. We were to abandon them, to be slaves. After all we'd shared and all that we've been through, a nation's gratitude was a dusty grave. For we can't leave them to the people here, we'd rather see them dead. So each man will take his best mate's horse with a bullet through the head. For the people here are like their land, wild, cruel and hard. So banjo is your reward. It's as if he knows he's standing close to me, his breath warm on my sleeve, his head hung low, as if he
Thanks, Kira. Back. Kira is going to read or tell an anecdote called I'll Think About It. So we have four readers or four people left. Two of them are songs, so I'm going to mix them up a little bit.
Pardon?
I said, I'm already mixed up.
Hi everyone. So a couple of months ago, my husband set up a GoPro camera out the front of our house and took 2,500 photographs of he and I rolling out some lawn, and turned it into a time-lapse video which is now available on YouTube, and it's really exciting to watch. Come and ask me if you want the link. But anyway, what struck me as funny at the time, after just one day and 2,500 photos later, was I was kind of grappling with telling my grandparents' life story at the time and thinking they don't even have remotely close to 2,500 photographs of their entire lifetime, which spans 90 years. and we blast through these in like one day. And what they had is a beautiful photo album of their combined childhoods and their marriage and their early years in this cherished album. And I thought, what a fantastic way to ask them to choose 10 of those highlights and to be able to anchor some of their life story to those photographs. And it's something Blaise and I have been talking about for an aged care project, possibly in the future, going into aged care centres and asking people to choose a photograph that they would like to represent their life, or a series of photographs to put together a life story that you could tell a lot of their story around. So I just wanted to try it on you guys today with my grandparents, because when I asked them to choose a photograph individually for the cover of their biography, they both individually chose this one, which is just a photograph from a wedding party in 1956. And you see my grandmother wearing a beautiful velvet pillbox hat. Hats are a theme tonight as well, and a stole, and they're in their early 20s, 2 years into their marriage, and she's actually pregnant with her first child at the time, and they're obviously engrossed in each other, as you are in first years of marriage, and they're fresh-faced and in their prime, and I think chatting intently as well, and they're full of hopes and ambition. And my papa, whenever he sees this, he says to my grandmother, "You look so lovely. I love your hair in this and your facial expression." And my papa has always summed up his life as being happy. "I met Bettine and I married her, and she's the best thing that ever happened to me." And I think the photo shows the truth in that he cherished her then, and he still does today.
How long have they been married?
That's a good question. I should know that, shouldn't I? 1956, 1954 they were married, so who's good at maths?
4 years.
Yeah, so
65 years.
65, thank you. You can read their biography, it'll be in there. So anyway, they met on holiday in Lorne at Erskine House, if you know it, around the age of 20, and they all used to get the train to Geelong and go by bus to Lorne from there. The train and bus were full of young people, said my grandmother, and when you got there, on one night there'd be a dance at Erskine House, and the next night there'd be one at Cumberland House, and everyone you knew would go to these dances, and there'd be lots of young people to meet, which was a good thing because you got to understand boys, the good boys and the bad boys. And that's what's a shame for young people right now, she says to me all the time, is you only meet them at pubs and nightclubs, whereas our dances, we only had orange juice and cordial, and we didn't have money, and we just didn't drink at that age. It was a much simpler time. So they both had partners then. Yes, Kira, your papa, Graham, was going out with Velda Harris, and he always asks, "Yes, tell her, Bettine, how you saved me from Velda Harris." Because in those days, you didn't just go out with one person, says my grandmother. You'd see the same movie about 3 or 4 times in 1 week. So her record was going to the same movie 4 times in 1 week. And on the last time, the usher looked at me as if to say, "Not again, Bettine, not again." So they met at the golf course that was part of Erskine House. We did a small 9-hole course and we played together, my papa likes to say. For some reason at that golf course you had to supply your own balls, and Bettine and her friend Sheila lost all the balls that I had. So when Bettine went home and I was still down at Lorne, she posted a box of 12 balls to me. "Oh, I knew he was desperate," my grandmother says. "They were used balls, but I knew he needed them." I probably fell in love with her then, my papa likes to say. For my grandmother, the photo of the two of them at the wedding party represents the beginning of a successful family life, raising 3 children and having enough money to buy a house and feed and clothe and holiday once a year. Both of their parents had lived through the tough depression years in the late 1920s when a lot of people were out of work. My mother used to give the woman down the street a florin, which was 2 shillings, to wash our clothes so they would just have some food. Because my dad was in work when the depression was on, my mum used to feed half the people in the street, says my grandmother. And when we were kids, the Second World War was on, and we used to have to go down and do the shopping for our mothers and get meat and vegetables with ration coupons. We got 4 ounces of butter a week, a little bit of meat, and the poor mothers had an awful time feeding families on the ration cards when all the food went overseas. My papa likes to say at school they taught us what could and couldn't be foraged for and eaten. Since most of the men had gone away to war and the women were busy working in the factories and doing things for the war, we had a really threadbare education, made up of young people who were too young to do anything else, or old people who were tired, or people who had a disability and couldn't get into the army. So a lot of naughty boys would make use of this lack of discipline by bringing a bunch of weeds to school, obvious crappy weeds, and say, Miss, would you tell me what type of vegetable this is? His auntie, I don't know if I should rush through this, but anyway, we didn't have a car till I was 10 years old. It was a Hudson Terraplane, my grandma says. And you drove your family's Austin when we met, Graham. You had to wind it up with a crank 2 or 3 times to start it, and it often wouldn't make it up the hills. Yes, he says. And I remember a time I pushed it to the limit on one day. The day I asked you to marry me, Bet. Do you know what she said to me after I asked her to marry me? I'll think about it. I'd driven all the way to her family home in Camberwell to ask the question, and when she said that, I just couldn't believe it. Was I a third-rater here? Was I the only one in her reign? How many other contenders were there? I had to drive all the way back home again, not knowing how long she would need to think. I gave that little Austin hell of mine all the way home to Bentley, making it rev up every hill. When I told my mother, she said, "Oh, Graham, what have you done? The poor girl, she's so nice and you haven't got 2 pence to rub together." Luckily, though, my grandmother only made him wait for a week that has since turned into a lifetime of memories for them both. Since their fresh-faced beginning in this treasured photograph, several houses, jobs and grandchildren later, they were able to move to Brighton, a place my grandmother has always loved. So to look back and see how they grew it all from a box of used golf balls and less than 2 pence is a really wonderful achievement.
Jess hiding up the back there. Jess is going to read an essay. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Kisumu? Kisumu? Oh, to you, sorry. Come on, Matt.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Jess. I'd just like to read a little bit of something that I wrote quite a while ago about the first time I went to Africa. Kisumu. There is no perfection in the world. I remember the old man's name was Abednego, and he spoke calmly as we watched a group of little girls playing, laughing. You can just try. I can't remember what we had been discussing that day in the alleys behind the Ugunja marketplace, but I remember his exact words, reflective as he leant so simply against his old bicycle. You can just try. I've held on to them and found myself mouthing them silently when everything has seemed lost. Has not worked the way we have struggled to make it. Abednego's wisdom has comforted me, enough to keep going and to realise that doing your best is enough, even when things can't be fixed. And maybe that's the way it has always been and I didn't realise, and sometimes I still forget. Is it enough to try your best when it can't make things better? When you can't save someone? When you can't get God's attention fast enough to make it okay? Kenya was nothing like I had planned. All I was armed with were some scraps of information from the volunteer agency and the images from World Vision commercials that had moved me to fundraise as a 10-year-old. It was green. Banana trees and frangipani jutted out from behind corrugated tin sheets, along narrow pathways leading behind dilapidated shop fronts. Friends Hotel, Happy Place Mechanic, Bondo Cake Shop. Young men idly chatting on picky motorbikes, women frying donuts in a roundabout, touts reaching out of minibuses like acrobats to coerce pedestrians, high heels carefully negotiating the muck and rubbish strewn from gutters from the last downpour. From the balcony at the New Victoria Hotel, I could see down several of Kisumu's streets. There was something happening at every angle. Dogs, smoking piles of rubbish, children, benga beats pumping from passing buses. And beyond, the waters of Lake Victoria swam with hyacinth. I arrived in Kisumu last night, anxiously sporting my blue volunteer polo, which I had frightfully realised was the only hotel, and settled in for a couple of days. Another volunteer was arriving tomorrow, so we should pick her up and get organised before setting off for Mutumbu. The hotel was clean and tiled wall to wall. To my surprise, a steely guard, complete with semi-automatic gun and visor, protected the entrance. From what? I wasn't sure, but didn't find comfort by his presence or that of his colleagues who patrolled the inside courtyard of the hotel. I slept early that night and woke from jet lag and the call of a nearby mosque. I can still taste the energy I felt lying there in the New Victoria Hotel. The first light of the day was accompanied by a clamber of activity, the cast of people already in position on the street stage that played out before me. As I peered quietly from the small balcony overlooking the first scene, I felt excited. The voices, music and diesel told me I was here. I was finally in Africa, and there seemed to be room enough in the unfurling chaos to let me in. For breakfast, I ate eggs with no colour in the yolks, but felt everything colourful. Thanks.
Thanks, Jess. Gay, come on down.
I'm doing stand-up because I didn't prepare anything, so you might get anything. I thought I might talk about wardrobe malfunctions, actually. My girlfriend rang and made me laugh because she'd just been buying some bathers, and she said she got the bathers she wanted and she got dressed, but she couldn't find her bras. They'd disappeared out of the change room. So she's walking around everywhere trying to find it. She'd got dressed, and she said, "The lady, I can't find my bras." And the lady said, looked at her as though she was a bit suspicious and said, "Well, I'll come and help you, but I just have to finish what she was doing." So she was finishing it up, and then a lady came over and she said to my friend, "You've got some bras attached to the back of your jumper." So it happens to everybody, doesn't it? No. I can remember going up to the school to get my daughter, and I was lazily walking along, and something felt funny, and I looked around, and yesterday's tights were hanging out the back of my slacks. I am a bit of a slob, so you can tell, can't you, from something like that. And one of the funniest malfunctions was when we went to Spain, and we're walking with hundreds of people down to see the cathedral, and I mean literally there's thick soup going down the street, just so many people. And we're going along, and all of a sudden, my dress, I had this summer frock, this dress just took off, straight up like that, from the shoulders. It took off from the shoulders, and we didn't know that I was standing over a grate. And I'm yelling to Robin, I'm saying, "I've lost control of my dress, I've lost control of my dress." And I'm trying to pull the dress down, and it's shooting up at the same time. And Robin's trying to pull it down, and everybody around us is nearly dying with laughter. And we didn't have the sense to get off the grate because we didn't know we're on the grate. And it was the funniest thing, truly. And when we eventually did get off the grate, because somebody told us, "You're on a grate," and everyone was saying, I said, "I don't care if I'm on Facebook because they're not going to see my face." But it was very embarrassing. Probably the very worst malfunction I had was something that my mother was horrified about. My mother was such a lady, and whenever I did something that she thought was not ladylike, she just looked at me with this horrified, puzzled look on her face, as if to say, "How could I have the daughter that does this sort of thing?" And this was the real peak of everything to her. Robin and I were at a wedding, and we were dancing. We're rock and rollers, and we love rock and roll dancing. And we were so absorbed in our dancing, and I needed to go to the toilet, and I said, "I'll be back really quickly." And I raced in the toilet, and I got the toilet paper, and I rushed out, washed my hands really perfunctorily, and I raced back out again. And as I'm racing over to Robin, my friend Janet rushed over and she said, Gay, you've got toilet paper, right? Great long line of toilet paper hanging out from your skirt." And I said, "Oh no!" And so she's gathering it up, and there's dozens of people in this foyer, and they're all around, and she's gathering up the toilet paper. She rushed over to a bureau that was over at the side. She pulled the drawer out and stuck it in, went straight through onto the floor. There was nothing in the bureau except. So she grabbed that out again, and she rushed around looking for something else. And I said, "Oh, thank you so much for doing that." I said, "Don't tell anybody about this, Janet, ever. Promise me? Promise me, Janet, you won't tell." "No, I won't tell anyone." She walked straight back into the wedding, to the biggest table there where we were sitting, and she said, "Guess what Gay just did?" So I'm really in trouble with my correctness. Another time I was acting in Little Flinders Lane it was, I think, and they have these big buses where you eat and drink, and then round the back of the bus there's a couple of steps, and you step up that into the toilet, and the toilet's at the back of the bus. And I got up and sat on the toilet, and peak hour, lunchtime, the door creakily opened, and I was sitting on the throne in lunchtime. That's probably the worst thing that happened to me ever. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you.
Okay, you and Pamela have matching hair tonight, colour-wise. Yeah. She's up here. I just saw you both in the halo of the light.
We do too, don't we look beautiful?
Yeah, we do. Busybird colour. Okay, we have two musical pieces next. Jimmy is going to... Where's Jimmy gone? Oh, he's there. I thought he ran away. Jimmy is... I'm not sure what Jimmy's going to do. Oh, we've got a different guitar tonight.
Toy.
Sorry? What did he say? Another toy. Oh yeah, Jimmy's got lots of toys. How many guitars have you got all together? I've seen the room.
Enough guitars. Not really prepared. In case you're wondering what I'm playing, it's made out of car parts. Yeah. Beautiful car parts. Some make wheels parked outside Greensboro Shopping Centre. Yeah. I knocked them off and went down to a guy that welded and down the road in Para Road. Yeah.
Tell the real story of what they and how many of those are in the world, Jim?
Okay. Truth is there's only 20 of these in the world. Would you mind holding this? I've forgotten my capo. And if I can take you back in time a bit, why I got so obsessed by this particular thing was because I'm sure some years back you would have heard this. Remember that song? Okay. Well, that's not what I'm going to do. So because of that, and I went high and low to search for this. And the full story I told that at my show, just the one just went past it. That's Paran. It's an interesting story. I've taken this guitar down to the south because this was one of the. Can I bring the microphone over a bit? Yeah, they're from the. I went down the south and I went to a place called Clarksdale, Mississippi. And Clarksdale, Mississippi is for the blues, people from the blues background. And I do like a lot of blues. So tonight, I'm going to cut it short. I'd like you guys to join me because tonight I want to entertain you guys. How's that? Yeah. I'm not going to do any of my originals tonight. I want you to sing along with me if you could. Saturday, the regular crowd shouting. There's an old man sitting next to me. He loves this tonic and sure how it goes, but it's sad, sweet, and I knew it complete when I wore a younger man's clothes. Hey, da da dee da, da da dee da, da da. Well, sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we all in the mood for a melody, and you've got us feeling alright. Now John at the bar is a friend of mine. He gives me my drinks for free. Yes, he's quick with a joke and light up the smoke, but there's some place that he'd rather be. This is still, I believe, this is killing me. As a smile ran away from his face. Well, I'm sure that I could be a movie star if I could get out of this place. La la dee dee da, la la dee dee da, la da. Paul is a realistic novelist who never had time for a wife. Well, he's talking to Davy, who's still in the Navy, and probably will be for life. As the waitress is practicing politics, as the businessman slowly gets low, yes, they're sharing a drink they call loneliness, but it's better than drinking alone. Well, sing us a song, you're the piano man. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we all in the mood for a melody. You've got us feeling alright. It's a pretty good crowd at the Busybird. Blaise and Kev gave me a smile. forget about life for the rest. Hey! La la dee dee da. La la dee dee da. La da. Sing with me now. Well, sing us a song, piano man. Sing us a song tonight. Well, we're all in the mood for a melody. You've got us feeling